earlier last week, and the whole point of this review is to look at time. And it's also good to review things to be able to become more and more familiar, because it is so much. And for you guys, Brenda, we started the fall of 24. Is that right? Yeah, the fall of 24 we started. And so, and then we do take some breaks in there, but that
was with Daniel.
Say what?
I think that was Daniel.
No, sir.
I think this is our 4th semester. Yeah.
Yeah, this one is.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
Oh, so it was the fall of 25? No, that's not right, is it?
No, because this is
Yeah, fall of 24.
winter of 26.
Fall of
Okay.
24.
Yeah.
As long as you agree with me, then I trust myself. Okay. So that's how we started. So it is, you're right, it's our 4th semester of going through this. And I'm learning things because I've never taught through it before. And obviously, I would do it different. But you have to have a guinea pig group, and guess who instigates? Okay, so last week we got up to chapter 7, and we saw that we looked at Revelation from a standpoint that there's 4 ideas about how to interpret the book. 3 of them are history, and 1 of them is future. And we looked at Old Testament prophecies, and that Revelation actually alludes to 278 Old Testament verses in it. Of the 404 allude to Old Testament verses. And we talked about how Old Testament verses that have been fulfilled, they're fulfilled literally, and they're fulfilled just like God said. And so when we get to Revelation and people try to make it different, we're not approaching it from that standpoint. Otherwise, we would all be old before we got done if we covered all of those rabbit trails that people go on. But there's more evidence to support the future view of the book. And so we talked about that. We also talked about, now we're trying to figure out time. How do we nail down time? And we can't 100% nail down time, because at the end of the day, really good scholars are going to disagree. And we're going to cover a little bit of what they disagree about and why. And I know where I'm thinking, but that doesn't mean that that's right. That's where I'm operating from right now. And so anyway, but we said basically they agree. Let's see, how can I do this better than last week? Everything can be better than last week. Okay, we said this time period is how long?
7 years.
Yeah, this is a 7-year time period, okay? And we said, so this is halfway through, and we said this 7 years is talked about not in the book of Revelation, but where? Daniel. And does anybody know where in Daniel?
9:27.
There you go, 9:27. And that's where we get this time frame of 3.5 years and 3.5 years. Now, Revelation does talk about 3.5 years. It doesn't talk about 7 years unless you look at the rider on the horse in chapter 6, verse 1, where we know that rider on the horse is who? The Antichrist, and he comes bringing peace, which would relate to this first part. Because we know what he does here is what? What starts the 7 years? And that's based on also Daniel. Okay, yes, he makes a covenant with the many, and that's Jewish leadership. And so that starts the 7-year clock. We know what breaks it because Daniel tells us. And what happens in 9:20? What breaks it halfway through?
He sets up an abomination that causes desolation.
Okay, so there's an abomination, and other people, including Jesus, abomination, including Jesus referenced that, which we will discuss again. And he also stops what?
Sacrifice.
Yeah, the sacrifices, and that's unique to Daniel, but it certainly fits Revelation. And Revelation pretty much, when it talks about 3.5 years, it's referencing this time period. And so when one of the futuristic views of Revelation is that all the judgments, which are, the first one is seals, the second one is
Trumpets.
the third one is
Bowls.
boy, you guys are good. Okay, so they say whoever, because of the 3.5 years, they say that all of those events take place in these 3.5 years. Because Revelation only references 3.5 years. Okay? So that's what they say. Okay? Then we also said that there's a second one. And again, this is totally futuristic. It has nothing to do with how people interpret the book historically. But we said the second way that somebody's going to look at the book of the Revelation is to interpret is, where are those 3 judgments?
In the first 3? First 3?
Say what?
In the first 3?
They don't tend to think that, but they do. They think that this is going to be,
The seals.
yep, the seals, and this is going to be,
The trumpets.
yep. Okay, and then this is basically the third possibility of how people interpret the book. And what is it?
Seals and trumpets first and the
Yep.
bowls.
Seals and trumpets with the bowls here. Okay? We also said last week that there's, and it's this view, okay? Trying to think if that applies there. It could apply here. No, it will not. It's this view, okay? We said that there's 5 chapters that drive the book. And we said there is something that drives the book chronologically. There's 22 chapters. So from chapter 6 to chapter 19 covers these 19 judgments of the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. Okay? So we said last week, what drives time in the book?
The seals being opened and the trumpets.
Yes, so there's, what drives time is these events, and we are here right now, we're gonna be talking about the trumpets tonight, as soon as we get over this, but that's what drives the book, is that these are in chronological order, that's what drives time, and so as each one of these are open, we see time progressing, okay? Now, that's only like 5 chapters, and so that means 13 other chapters from 6 to 19 have some information, and the way that they read this, interpret this, is these chapters provide additional information that is not being talked about while these judgments are opening. So when Jesus is opening the seals, then they're picking up some details, so it's like another pass-through of some details that were not added initially, okay? So,
It's kind of like one of those storybooks where you have a section of the story and he goes, go to page 7 to read about this.
yes, it's like that. It's exactly like that. But that makes it confusing, okay? Now, if you try to read it totally with this view, you can't read it all as the whole book is chronological, okay? Now, with this view, they're basically going to say that the book is chronological. So that's the difference between the 3 basic views. You're gonna have some variation in there, and we're gonna touch on those and have discussion about, things that we might struggle with or not, and which is why I was telling Donnie this today or yesterday. This is why they tell you something's in the first half, or they tell you something's in the second half, but they don't tell you why they believe that. because it is hard. It's hard. And I'm gonna do the best that I can, but I'm not gonna say to you, I know which one I lean toward based on my own study, but I can say that you know, that this is the 3 views that people come up with, okay? Any thoughts, any questions before we move forward?
Whatever we say those contained in 7 years, correct?
Exactly. Exactly.
And the whole 7 years is the tribulation.
Well, Jesus says, he calls it the Great Tribulation at this point in time.
That's what I was thinking, so I was kind of confused.
No, Jesus says it is the middle from that point forward, and we'll cover that when we go through Matthew, but it's Matthew 24:21 that Jesus says that. And he uses the abomination 24:15 as his marker, okay? So, but where we get the idea that this is a 7 years is we, again, by comparing the Bible to the Bible, and Daniel tells us this. It's the, Revelation doesn't tell us this, but Daniel does. And so that's where we get that. And that's why we put the pieces together that way to help us to get as close a picture or a closer understanding. Okay? So let's see. We're good. So let's go to Revelation chapter 8. So, would somebody read, and we'll read some of this, but some of it we're just going to reference because, again, this isn't our first pass through, but we're just doing this as a reminder, and we're doing it to look at time. So look at Revelation chapter 8, verse 1 and 2. Let's just go ahead and read those 2 verses.
When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them.
Okay, so what is contained in the 7th? Well, no, I want to ask this question, okay? So maybe I'll read my paper. What scene does John record in Revelation chapter 8, 1 and 2? What does John see?
Opening of the 7th seal.
Yep, he does.
Silence in heaven.
30 minutes of silence in heaven, and in the opening of the, and so he's also, and we're going to see that throughout the book, he's also focusing where? He's focusing where?
In heaven.
Heaven, okay, yes. And, but the judgments are going to take place where?
On earth.
Right, and so what is the connection that he's being told that we need to understand? Bad question?
Jesus.
Thank you.
That's Jesus.
What, does the seal pertain to the judgment?
Yes, you're moving in, and that seal is opened where? In heaven by Jesus,
Yeah.
but the impact of it where? Is where? It's on earth. And we're seeing these scenes go back and forth between heaven and earth, and God wants us to understand that what happens in heaven is what initiates these judgments on earth. Yeah.
Is that actually 30 minutes time, or is that a different description of time?
I think it is.
Oh.
The fact that he said 30 minutes, and I think why would they pause? Why would all heaven? Because if we remember some of the chapters leading up to this, there's a whole lot of singing, and a whole lot of rejoicing, and a whole lot of worshiping, and a whole lot of created creatures flying around and talking, and so this is like a contrast to what we've seen. And so why would we see this 30-minute pause?
The seals were complete,
Okay,
like in Genesis, where he rested after
okay,
or on the 7th day.
yep, that is part of it for sure. Definitely part of it. And technically, by that being opened, and everything else is going to be coming out of that. And so going along with the completeness. But what else are we seeing?
I was just thinking like reverence for what's about to happen.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, is like, and I don't know how they have the awareness to know. I don't know how that happens, but it certainly seems like there's a awe of what's coming next. Yes, and they have an understanding of that. Okay, after the silence, Jesus does open the seventh seal, and what do we see? What does the seventh seal contain?
7 angels.
7 angels.
Trumpets.
Yeah, with 7 trumpets. Okay, so we got 7 trumpets there. And then just like we saw in chapter 6 with those first 4 seals opening, we kind of see this rapid fire 4 seals, 4 judgments coming. And this one, it's easier to remember because it's the 1/3 series of judgments on the earth. And so if you look at, we're looking at 7 through 12, and it's just kind of listed, and we see the first sounding in verse 7, and 1/3, what do we see? What's the first trumpet?
Hail and fire mixed with blood.
Yeah,
hurled
hail
down on the earth.
and fire, and what was that last part?
Hurled down on the earth.
Hurled on the earth.
A third of the earth was burned up. A third of the trees and all the grass.
Okay, so what's the next one?
Burning mountains thrown into the sea. A third of the sea dies.
And again, we've gone through this in detail, and so we're not gonna do that unless somebody wants to have that conversation. What's the third one?
The creatures in the sea and had life died, and a third of the ships were destroyed.
That's the second story.
Okay, and then what's the last one?
A third of the sun, moon, stars are struck, causing a reduction of light by a third.
Okay, so we're seeing daylight being reduced by a third. So the
Rivers.
where,
Three
No.
was
the rivers?
is the fresh one.
Yeah,
Okay, they give you the
Yeah, because the
wormwood.
salt goes with the ships in the sea.
the star
Yeah.
fell from heaven
Wormwood.
and burned like
Yeah.
a torch, and it fell on
Wormwood.
a third of the rivers and on the springs of waters.
Okay, so we're seeing the heavens dropping rocks. And we will once in a while see a news clip that we missed an asteroid or a meteor by millions and millions and millions of miles. That was scary,
But we see burning mountains all the time.
right? Huh?
Volcanoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so these are the first 4 trumpet and what those judgments are that are brought to the earth. And then, let's look at verse 13. I think that's where we are. Yep. What do we see in verse 13? Let's go ahead and read that.
And I looked, and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound."
Okay, so we've had 6 judgments in the seals. We've now had 4, so there's 10 judgments that have hit the earth. Everything from war and famine, and how much of the population has died in the 6th seal.
Like 50%.
25%.
Of the remainder.
Yes, 25% of the population, is about 2 billion people have died up to this point, and yet the angel crying in the mid-heaven says what?
Well,
It's worse. It's getting worse.
It's getting worse.
Mhm.
What's coming is worse, okay? So that ends chapter 9, and then chapter 8, and then chapter 9 contains the details of the 5th and the 6th seal, okay? And I want you to look at, see, we're gonna read part of chapter 9 while I erase the board. let's read the first 3 verses for right now.
Then the fifth angel sounded. Sorry. Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit, like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads.
Okay, so that means verse 4 is excluding who?
God's people,
Yes.
the
140. Yep, because we know we've already been told in chapter 7 that they've been sealed on their head, and the reason that they were sealed is what?
To witness.
It is protection, and it is to communicate the gospel during the tribulation. Okay? So it shows the grace of God during the tribulation, that he loves the people that are still going through these horrific events. Okay, so what is happening when this 5th trumpet is blown? What are we seeing? What are we told?
And the angel opened the bottomless pit.
Who opens it?
The angel, the fifth angel.
The star does.
Oh.
The trumpet, the 5th angel
Yeah,
blows the trumpet, but the star
star
does.
falls
Falls
into
to
the
the
earth.
sky.
Yeah. Okay, and he opens the bottomless pit, and we compared that to other verses in the Bible, and we found out what about the bottomless pit? Anybody know?
Even the demons don't want to go there?
Yeah. Yeah. This is a
Not bad.
bad place.
My uncle used to call me in a bottomless pit.
What?
Yes.
I think he was
Be in the
referencing to
pit.
how much you ate. That is wrong.
Everyone turns around.
Marcy's appalled at her uncle right here. Okay, so the bottomless pit, and if we would compare that to other references, which we did, we would find out that this is a place where demons have been forced to stay because they were of what they did.
So-
Punishment.
Yes, it is and they're
who
so
opened-
bad.
So who opened it then?
That's it, we're going there,
Yeah.
okay? So we do know it says, let
him
me
was
see,
given the-
just a second.
So, I
Yes.
got a quick question.
Yes,
Kind of piggybacks on what Dan said. So the star that opened it's not the same star that originally fell from heaven in a blaze that covered the rivers and everything, right?
no, and that's why we would think that is because we just read about that in chapter 8. But there's something unique, well, go ahead.
Oh, this is a 2-part now because
No,
how
we
you
can't have
answered
2 parts.
that. Well, you should have answered it that way.
Okay.
Well, it's just one.
Why does John specifically name that particular star out of all of them?
It's a really good question. We're going to dig into that more.
Okay.
But what does John do when he describes that star?
This one right here?
Yes,
You get it says him. So
exactly.
it's not a star. It's a
It,
it's a
2
fallen
things.
angel.
It had fallen.
Yeah.
It had fallen from the sky. Okay.
Yep,
Makes
that's
not-
what's, so that tells you this is an event that took place before this event.
So the
He
star
had
had fallen
fallen.
from Lucifer.
Had
It's
fallen.
going to
We're
give the
talking
heat of
about-
Lucifer.
It's Morning Star.
Yep, okay, so this took place before this. Okay, he had fallen and so we go from a star falling to a he identity, and he is given a key,
Was given.
okay, was given a key, and he unlocks the pit,
He opened the bottomless pit and smoke went up.
okay? So that's what's happening,
So does that mean he always had the key?
He was given it.
just
He was
wasn't
given
allowed to use it until now?
yeah, because they're still locked there.
Many was given it at that time.
Yes, because they're still locked there.
Okay.
Okay, and it's still future in our time. Doesn't mean demons aren't functioning in this world, they
Right.
are. Okay, but we're gonna see an event where the demons that are there, the demons that are functioning on this earth, and demons that have access to heaven are all now functioning on this planet. Okay, so in here he also says they're going to have an opportunity to torment people for how long? Do you remember?
5 months.
For 5 months. And they can't, nobody can die. No matter how bad the torment is, nobody can die. So they're allowed, and that's why this trumpet, the 5th trumpet, is a woe. It's because, holy cow, they're being tormented spiritually, tormented by these demons that were released from this pit. And that's what's happening. We know it's at least 5 months long. That's what we know about this time frame. Okay. Let's look at the second part, and then we're going to come back. Okay, to the star that's fallen. All right. So then we're going to look at the 6th seal, which starts. Trumpet, which starts in verse 13.
I didn't read that far down.
Say what?
I didn't read that far down.
No, you did not read that far down. So let's look at 13, and let's see. Let's go just through 15, excuse me.
Then the 6th angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar before God, saying to the 6th angel, who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the 4 angels who have been prepared for the hour, the day, the month, and the year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind.
Okay, so we do also know now, when the 6th trumpet is blown, how many people die?
Another third.
Another 1/3. And so now at this point in time, almost 50% of the world's population, if it was today, 4 billion people, will die. Up to this point in time. Okay? So, and if we would go through the rest of the chapter, he's going to describe that. You'll come with up to 2 interpretations or a combination of both. He's describing an army. And he's describing, so whether that literally in his description could be military equipment, it literally could be, how much of the army do you see, or the size of the army? Do you see a number?
200 million or twice 10,000 times 10,000.
Yeah. And how much is that?
10,000 times 10,000
It
times
says
3.
200 million, exactly. So there you go. Your fancy way of saying it is 200 million, okay?
But just
So
to back up to the deaf people, it's like there's so many people that died. There's not enough people to bury the people that died.
That's true.
They're
That
just-
is so true.
You know what I mean? It's like if you look, 6 billion people died.
And
Or 4 billion
everybody
people
else
died,
is just
and everybody
maneuvering
else is
around
just-
these
yeah.
bloated bodies.
It's impossible
It's gonna be awful.
unless we've gone through some kind of a war type environment. It's impossible for us to realize the horror.
Because if it's like a nuclear thing, then you could wipe off those people. But if they just die, they're
Yes.
just they're not gonna be able to get rid of that, bury that many people in this year.
Yes. So we've got the 5th trumpet where Satan releases these demons. Now, because it's on the 6th trumpet is on the heels of those demons, some people think that it is demonic, and some people combine it with, yes, it's some kind of an army. And the world's population at one point in time, made people go, nah, there can't ever be an army of 200 million people, but in today's day,
Because China has that.
China does.
that big
And this
conscript.
does come from the east. I'm not saying it's China, but it does say in the text that this army comes from the east. So, whether it is demonically, a demonically energized army, or totally demonic, we don't know. But we do know that there's a demonic influence on the earth during that time frame, okay? So that's the second woe. Again, we've seen a third of the population die, and 50% of the population is now gone.
I mean,
So,
I think you can confidently say it's more than demonic, what you said, brain just went blank. It's controlled by demons, because that's the point of this part of the Bible.
yeah, and as we continue to move forward in the book, we're gonna see that Satan and his demons are impacting government.
It's not
We
just
can look through
influence, they're
history.
controlling it,
We
they're
can look
doing
through,
it.
yes,
Yeah.
and we can see that that's true, whether we recognize it or not, that has been true throughout human history. Okay? All right, so let's go back to chapter 9, verse 1, and let's pick up where we were talking about this. Okay, so we know that there's a star being described, and again, we went through some of these things with our first pass, but we know that it says the star had fallen, and puts pronouns instead of a star, which are male pronouns, okay? Is there a time where we have read about, yes, is there a time that we have read about Satan's fall?
Yeah, so they fell as a star from the fall from heaven with all the other people. They were considered stars in heaven.
Which we looked at that. We looked at that in Isaiah.
Yeah.
But we also, the last time we were together, which was months ago, you're welcome, the last chapter was Revelation chapter 12. So let's go to Revelation chapter 12 and let's see what details we can find in Revelation chapter 12. Verse 3 and 4. So basically chapter 12 is going to introduce characters that are going to play. We're going to get more detail about those characters as we continue to progress. And in case you were wondering where we really are in time, we are actually, when we start moving forward, it's chapter 13. And we did finish with chapter 12 back on, the 19th of November. Okay? But so let's look at chapter 12, verses 3 and 4.
And another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 diadems. And his tail swept away a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth, he might devour her child.
Okay, and if you look at verse 9, you're going to see we don't have to guess at who that dragon is. Who is the dragon in verse 9?
Satan.
Exactly. So we know. And so that helps us to come back here and understand. We skip verses 1 and 2, not because they're not important, but because just for time. But there's a description of, we should probably read that for context, okay? So let's read these out of order. Let's read verses 1 and 2 of chapter 12.
A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth.
Okay, so we've got a woman, and who is that woman? The nation of Israel, and she's pregnant. And who's she pregnant? Who's the nation of Israel pregnant with? Jesus, and that is confirmed in verse 5. Look at verse 5, and what are we told in verse 5?
She gave birth to a son, a male child, who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne.
Okay, so 33 years were wrapped up in one verse, right? Okay, and so then if you look at the verse before that, or the verse that we read, let's read 3 and 4 again, just for fun. Let's read those 2 verses again.
And another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head were 7 diadems, and his tail swept away a third of the stars of heaven and threw them down to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth, birth, he might devour her child.
So what was Satan's plan? And it's always been his plan, is to thwart God's plan and his love for people. And he's always trying to stop it. So what was his plan, and what did that actually look like?
Kill Jesus.
Yeah, it was to kill Jesus.
That way you couldn't.
Yes.
You couldn't fulfill God's
Yes,
plan.
exactly. And it was King Herod who he tried to, and who he killed all those babies 2 and under, because he couldn't quite figure out. And at that point, God had moved Mary and Joseph and Jesus where?
Egypt.
To Egypt. And then there's a prophecy that says, out of Egypt I'll call my son. Okay, so those are those events in there. What did Satan do when he, look at verse 4, what else did he do?
He drew a third of the stars from heaven and threw them to the earth.
Okay, so there are places, including Job, where we see angels referred to as stars. And the fall, and so that also plays into what we saw in chapter 9, verse 1, where it's referencing a star falling. So here is with this, the third of the stars and Satan, what fall is this?
It's the fall of when Satan was kicked out of heaven. That's the angels he took with him with the stars that he drew from the sky.
Okay, it's not when he was kicked out of heaven, because we're going to read that here in just a second, but it is describing what? What fall? That's coming. That's what Dan is referring to. You're good. Dan's a bad influence.
He gets a class to participate.
Huh?
He said he gets a class to participate.
Yeah, he does. Okay, so what is this? What event is he describing here? And it's all in time-wise in these verses. It's not in chronological order. But what is he referring to?
The first coming.
Yeah, his original fall. So this is the little bit of information that we're given about his original fall. And a third of the angels went with him. Okay?
Did he say that even though with his first fall, after that he still had access to heaven?
That's where we're going.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yes, thank you for preempting that. You're good. Okay, so let's look at what Joe just referred to, and let's read 7 and 9. 7 through 9.
And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him.
Okay, so this is another fall that's being recorded here. And in this fall, what do we find out?
He takes angels with him.
Okay.
Takes more angels with him then.
Okay, but we don't know that because he has access, because Job tells us that. He has access to God. And he tells us in here what he does with his access. What does he do? The end of verse 10. You see, what does he do with his access to heaven?
Accuses us.
Yep, he's the accuser
Yep.
before God's throne day and night. That's what he does with his access. So somehow we don't, again, this is all the understanding that we're given about this war and his access, very limited understanding. And so, but we do understand is that he had angels, fallen angels with him. There was a war in heaven. Michael is who? Who's Michael?
He's the archangel.
And if we would go to Daniel 12:1,
Prince of
which at
Israel.
some point we will, it says that he's the prince of the nation of Israel. Okay? So there is, I don't understand totally, we aren't given details about this war, but there is a point in time where he's thrown down. And he does not have access to heaven anymore. So when he talks of, when we read in 9:1, that he had fallen this is the details of him falling. Okay? And again, we had to go to chapter 12, so we had to get some insight from chapter 12 to understand what chapter 9 was telling us.
So it sounds just like falling, meaning if he fell once, that means he was defeated. It doesn't, I mean, you know, he was, it's a, how can you fall twice, right? You're already out of heaven, but you're kicked out of heaven.
But
So he's
apparently,
defeated.
Still had
The
access.
first-
still
what
had
I'm saying-
access.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the first time he went from being an angel to being a demon.
But he's
Evil.
pretty determined, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna see that as we continue to go through this book, as he energizes leadership on the earth.
Then he also takes more with him. So,
Well, I think those are part of the original 1/3, and they access heaven with him. It's not additional angels that are now falling with him, but it's some reason they also are with him and have access to heaven. But we're not given a lot of insight, so we want to be careful not to speculate too much.
I mean, that's not the real point.
But there's also a couple of other details in here that we need to look at, and look at verse 12. What detail are we also given in verse 12?
The devil is down in the earth.
He only has a short time.
Yep, and what's his,
He's filled with fury.
he's mad.
He's great wrath.
Yes, so
Isn't
he's
he
been,
trying to take as many people as he can with him?
right. And it's always been his end game. But so this has happened. He knows now a couple of things. What does he know? What does he know? His time
is short.
Limited.
His time is short. And then we also, and we're going to compare this again to Matthew at some point, not tonight, but to what Jesus said. But we're going to see what does he do in verse 13?
Pursues the woman.
Yes, and who's the woman?
Israel.
Yes, so he is going after, and the rest of that chapter is detailing what happens, and at the end of the day, he cannot get to. Part of those children flee, he can't get to them, and then in verse 17, what do we see? He can't get them, they're fleeing, and we're going to get into that, but, and then verse 17, what do we see?
It goes on to something else.
He goes on to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus.
And he is what?
Satan.
Yes, he is Satan, and he is mad. We're told that twice right here. He is mad. And so we see this satanically energized anti-Semitism, and him tried to go after that group of Jews, which we'll go into, and he's going back. And he's going to
Get whoever else he can get.
Yes, and then you're going to see verse 6 is going to give us a time detail. Because it's describing, again, all of those events are taking place over a time span. And so look at the end of verse 6, and what do we see?
42 months.
Yep.
3.5 years.
Yep. So 3.5 years. And every time we think of 3.5 years, this should make us go, what? This event is taking place when?
In the future.
Yes, in the future, but when?
In the second half, and the
Yes,
third,
in the middle.
yeah.
So we have a lot of things that we're told about that happen in the middle, and now we're getting a spiritual element that's happening in the middle and has an impact on things on earth.
So if he's going after over the people that keep God's commandments, what happened to the other people? They're not inflicted by it?
Some of them flee, some of them don't.
Okay.
So he can't get those that flee, and again, we'll get into that more. And then he's going back. He's going after the ones
Well,
that
if the
didn't flee.
woman is Israel,
Yep.
then the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus, could that be the Christians?
No, because he's specific about this is Israel, but it is converted Jews. Remember, we've got
So he's going back after.
144,000.
Yes, and it is 144,000, and remember, they're protected. They don't have to run.
So he's not going to, I mean, even though he goes after them,
God
He
limits
can't.
his power.
Yeah,
He
they're
can't touch 'em.
miraculously protected. And we're gonna get into that. We did get into it before, but we will come up with it again, okay?
Because at this time, the Christians that were there should have already been gone with the rapture, so there's no.
That is correct. And
These
the
are
only
just-
people on the earth are the 144,000, and then 2 people that are introduced in chapter
And then the
11.
people that get converted during that time.
Exactly. The people who are converted
So he's going
because
after
of the
those,
gospel. And we do know that there are, from chapter 7, we know there's a lot of people that are converted, right? Because we're told that in like verse 3 or 4, that there people from every tribe, nation are converted, and a lot of them we see in that chapter also are marked.
Because once they're converted, Satan knows it, and he goes after them.
Yeah, and we're gonna see more details of what things that are going on when we hit chapter 13, of what's going on. Okay, so,
Question.
yes,
So the ones that flee and that he can't get to, are those the ones that when it says, when you see him set up, run for the hills,
yes,
and he can't access the hills?
yes. For some reason,
We can't
because,
find
and
out
he
why
says
it
God protects them. And so Jesus does say that in Matthew 24, 15 and 16. He says, when you say, well, let's go there, let's go there.
What is it, Matthew? What?
Desecration of the word
Yep.
creation of
Yep, that'll won't be one verse that you guys absolutely will remember from either Daniel or this.
What is it, Matthew? What?
15, 16.
15 and 16,
Fifth verse?
18.
So when you see standing in the holy place, the
Yes.
abomination that causes desolation,
Yes. And remember, who said it?
spoken through the prophet Daniel.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel said, when you see, and he in 927 is where he said it. And Jesus is saying, when you see, and again, some people try to make Daniel's writing because it's so accurate history. Jesus describes him here as a
Prophet.
okay? When you see that event, and what does he say? Look at 16 through 19.
And let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house.
Yep. And he goes on.
Wow.
And some people try to make this Christians, but it is clearly Israel. And why would you say it's clearly Israel?
What chapter?
Matthew 24, 15 and 16.
It's the holy
Judea.
place, right? Isn't that the temple?
Yes, he's in the abomination of death, standing in the holy place. So there is the temple, which is in Jerusalem and Judea. Exactly. So
Wherever
we
that is to be built, I guess. It has to be rebuilt, right?
Yes, it has to be rebuilt. So we're seeing actually Jerusalem references right here where Jesus is telling them get out of Dodge. That also fits with what we saw in chapter 12 because he's gotten thrown out of heaven. He knows his time is short. He knows he has 3.5 years. He goes after people that are fleeing. And then he can't get them because at the end, which we didn't read of chapter 12, it says they're miraculously protected by God. So now he's still mad, and he's madder mad, and he's going after those who did not flee. Okay? So that's the events, that's the star that's fallen, that's the what has taken place prior to the key opening the bottomless pit and those demons coming out as the 5th trumpet. Okay, so let me see. We're gonna go through 10. Actually, I hope to get the first couple of verses of 11. So basically, in chapter 10, if you look at verse 1, what happens in chapter 10?
I saw still another mighty angel coming down from heaven, clothed with the cloud, and a rainbow was on his head. His face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire.
Okay, where were we just at the end of chapter 9?
We're at the pit.
We had the 6th trumpet blow. We have that army, either whether demonic and or a physical army. That's where we were. And now, all of a sudden, what's happened? What's he recording here in verse 1 of chapter 10?
Shifting to the sky.
cloud.
Yeah, also, what, it's a scene change. We're there, and now we have a scene change, and John's looking, and he sees this strong angel, and that happens a lot through the book. And some of it is giving us, like chapter 12, some additional details that we didn't have before, and chapter 13. And then when we get farther, also in the book. So that's what's happening. And he has in his hand what? Yep.
He had a little book open in his hand.
Yep. Okay, so then there's something that the strong angel says to him. And if you look at that in verses 3 to 4, what is it that he hears, that John hears?
The roar of a lion.
Okay, and look at the after that, the roar of
Seven
thunder.
peals of thunder.
Seven peals of thunder he hears. And what has John been told all the way through this book, up till now?
Record everything.
Record everything, but look at verse 4, and what is he told?
Shut this one up.
Seal it up.
Seal it up.
Not write it down. Doesn't he tell him to eat the book or something?
Yeah, he does, but he tells him, don't write this down. So whatever John heard, he did not write down. It will be an event in the future, but we don't know what that is. John knew, but he was told not to write it down. Okay? And then he is told something about, in verse 7, what is he told in verse 7?
The mystery of God would be finished.
Okay, and what's the mystery of God? There's a point in time where the mystery of God is finished. What's
John
the
was
mystery?
pointing to God's removal of all evil and the final
Okay,
exaltation of Christ.
okay. It's really taught, yeah, the final part of everything culminating. And there's some mystery attached to it because Old Testament people didn't understand. We're not told everything that is given in the New Testament, just like the church. The nation of Israel didn't know about the church. It's called a mystery. And so this is, God is wrapping up all the details of everything he planned during this time frame. Okay? And then verse 10, what does he do? He eats the book.
John eats it, yeah.
Yeah, John is told to eat it. He eats the book. He says it's what?
Sweet.
Sweet.
Taste, but
Sweet and bitter.
hard
Yes.
on some.
Yeah, and so and we know that the book, some people think it's a 7 sealed scroll. Some think it's a book with truth in it. And so why would that impact John? Why would the truth impact John that way? That when he ate it, it would be sweet, but inside it would be bitter.
Did Jesus reference his stomach turning when he thought about the people?
If he didn't, you can add that on too, because it would be definitely his response. He wept over Jerusalem. If you would have recognized your day of visitation, you would have known I was the Messiah. And so that was definitely his heart, and that's really what John's driving at. He's the sweetness of the truth, but the bitterness of the rejection of the truth. And especially,
And the
always.
results,
Yes.
consequences.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to jump into just the first couple of verses 11, and then we're going to quit. Look at verse 1 of chapter 11. Let's read that.
I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and I was told, go and measure the temple of God and the altar with its worshipers.
Okay, so what's happened from the end of chapter, and he's told he's going to prophesy again at the end of chapter 10. How did John prophesy again?
This was about the judgments against the nation of Israel.
Say that one more time.
Talking about eating the scroll that was filled with judgments against Israel.
I'm sure that is part of it for sure, because they are not converted. They didn't recognize Jesus as their Messiah. But so that's where John ends, and he's told he's going to prophesy again. And now, how does John prophesy again?
writing the book of Revelation.
Exactly. He wrote the book of Revelation, and look at the impact 2,000 years later. He also was released from the island of Patmos and was able to go back to Ephesus. And so potentially, you know, both of those things are true, but especially he wrote the book of Revelation. Okay, so then in 12, so we're seeing a shift in the scene. He's there, this is where he's interacting with this strong angel, and now all of a sudden, where is he? In verse 1.
At the temple?
Which is where?
On earth.
Yeah, where?
Jerusalem.
Exactly. So here he is now, he's in Jerusalem, and we don't know where he was with the strong angel, but now he's somewhere else, and he's in Jerusalem, and he's at the temple, and what is he told about the temple?
You can measure it. To leave out the court.
Okay, so measure the temple, and actually he's referencing a particular part of the temple.
And those who worship in it.
Okay,
The
yeah.
altar and the altar.
Yeah, so he's actually referencing these two places here, the holy place and what else?
Holy of the holy.
Yeah, holy
And the altar.
of holies. So that's what he's referencing when he is told to mark this out from the outer court, okay? So, I lost my question. So we know he's where? Where is he? Yeah, where is that?
Jerusalem.
Yeah, so we know he's in Jerusalem, and he's actually participating in this because he's measuring it out. And why would the separation be between, and we're told that, there's a separation between what he's measuring and what else? But not measure what else? Why?
The
outer
outer
court.
court.
Yep.
Given to the Gentiles.
Yep. Because it's going to be given to the Gentiles, and for, we're told, what?
3.5 years.
Yep, 3.5 years. Okay, what's interesting about this, we do know from this that what? He's in Jerusalem. He's measuring these physical places. It's another reinforcement that what?
The temple is built.
The temple exists. And a lot of people think it is that covenant with the Antichrist that will allow that to take place because of, not necessarily, it's speculation. We don't know. But we do know it's a possibility, but something happens that they can, and it's one of two things. They negotiate something that they can build it right next to, where?
The dome.
The mosque.
You'll hear both, the dome or the mosque. You'll hear both. Or they find out it wasn't at either place and they can build it somewhere else without any issues. But something's gonna have to happen to make that possible, okay? So, but we do know it's possible, and we do know that in here, something is happening. What are
Because
we
the dome
told?
has to be wiped away if it's gonna be there.
Huh?
They might wipe away the dome.
There's something that happens to make that possible, or it can be side by side, or in a different location. So we're also told what's happening.
The Gentiles.
Huh?
The Gentiles are not to measure the outer part.
Yes, because they're going to trample this for 3.5 years. Okay, but we're also told who is measured out.
The
Ones who
worship.
worship.
Yeah, and I think Robin said that, but I kind of jumped over. The worshipers, people that worship. So we do know that that's what's happening, and so that tells us what about the activity in the holy place, in the Holy of Holies.
It's up and running.
Yeah, it's up and running. They're practicing their Jewish beliefs, and we see that here. So when do they practice their Jewish beliefs? When are they able to do that? If you look at a 7-year time
The
period.
first 3.5 years.
The first 3.5 years makes a lot of sense. And then and you're gonna find some variation, probably not on that part, but you're may find variation on this part. When do we know there are all kinds of Gentiles walking through Israel?
All the time.
All the time over history.
Yep.
But here they're referring to a specific time where in Jerusalem.
When Jesus came, when they were setting up stuff in that part of the temple.
Yeah, and that's true. It's been forever. Now, it quit in 70 AD. But Jerusalem, and it mentions the city as well. But there is a point in time where they're going to be in the outer court. But what do we know from Daniel 9:27? They're going to take over. Yes, they're going to take over the inner court.
Yeah, so there has to be a holy of holies for the abomination, for the
Yes.
desolation to take back over.
Yes, and so it sure looks like this is that first 3.5 years. And so as we look at time, well, no, I'm not gonna even say that, okay?
But
So
then
we're,
it has to be that first 3.5 years, because with the worshipers there, they were doing sacrifices, and we know that sacrifices are allowed up to the first.
yes,
Because that's
Yeah.
when, like, that first, the trumpets, the seals are opened. Those have to happen before that can happen.
exactly,
In that 3 years, somehow, the temple has to be built.
yes. It has to be built, or they find out there's a different location and they can build it sooner.
Yes.
But
It's
there's
still
some,
3 years to build a temple.
but and now, today, they have virtually all the artifacts ready to go in the temple, so it's not like they have to create those and,
They have to build it, though.
they have to build it, but
It'll take 2
Technology.
Yeah,
I
2
guess
years to build a
it'll take
garage
long.
beside the
They've
Diamondback
probably
thing,
been
so.
planning it for a
Yep.
while.
And I don't, yeah. And what did they use? What did they use in the wilderness? Maybe they would even use a tent until, who knows? And that could be a day, because that's what they did in the wilderness. But it
Maybe it's
doesn't.
a ploy to get all the Jews to come to Israel to build the temple.
I don't know. We don't know. We're given enough information maybe to be dangerous, but we're not given every detail. And so, but we can compare the Bible to the Bible and at least get a better understanding and knowing we're not just like chasing rabbits in, nowhere land. And so so we're going to stop there, and we're going to be talking about next week the 2 witnesses. And by the way, chapter 11 is the most controversial time chapter, which we'll cover as we go through chapter 11. It is the one where why people say, nope, the trumpets are in the first half, or the trumpets are in the last half. But it is because of chapter 11 and the way that people read chapter 11. Okay, so we're almost back up to 13. So next week we will go through part of that. We will address some of those controversies and logically look at some of that, and then we'll be at chapter 13, which is in real time. And if you want to, because I never remember, at some point in time we actually were reading Amir's book, Revealing Revelation. So next week we'll start with if we can. I think we will. Yeah, Elaine's holding it up. So we will get through the rest of chapter 11 and some of the controversies in there, and then we did 12 tonight, and then we'll be in 13. Maybe only the first few verses of 13.
What's the name of the book?
Revealing Revelation by Amir Safar.
Yeah.
How do you say his last name?
Can you spell the last name?
T.S.
T-S-A-R-F-A-T-I.
Sephardi?
Yeah, Sephardi.
Revealing Revelation.
Yep. So if you are a reader and you are reading that book, then read that for next week, because we'll at least start into chapter 13.
So Janice,
Yes, sir.
since you've been through, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I'm done.
This is silly, but is John a good secret keeper, or does he, like later on, say, hey,
He's a
the
good
seven-
secret.
the 7 thunders?
Yep. He's a good
He's a good
secret keeper. Yep. He
When God
never.
tells you to keep something
Ain't in
secret,
the Bible.
you keep it
Yeah,
secret.
Exactly.
He's gonna start talking.
Ain't in the Bible.
I'm just saying.
Yep. And
Sink ships.
yep. And we will be looking at what from Revelation 13 really goes heavy into Daniel. So we'll be spending some time in Daniel, and we will be looking at Ed.
The little mouthy.
The little mouthy.
Little mouthy.
The little Molly horn.
Okay, let's close. Dear Heavenly Father, I know that the reason you want us to know things is so that we have the right approach to you and the right attitude about what our lives mean and how we spend our time here. And Father, at the end of the day, Peter told us, if all these things are going to happen, what kind of people should you be? And I just pray that we would ask ourselves these things and that we would become the people that we're supposed to be because of who you are. And Lord, you have a better way for us to live. And God, you make us the people that we need to be. And thank you for that. It's a gift of grace. Nothing that we can do. And God, as we look at this life as temporary, I pray that we would be thoughtful and mindful of the people around us that don't know you. That we would encourage each other in our faith as we walk through hardships that are very real on this planet. Thank you that you love us. And thank you for the things that you tell us. And that we can look at those logically and have an understanding that you want us to have. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.